सावरे रंगराजी राणाजी हूँ
Hello, and welcome to the Shakti Hour, a podcast on Ram Dass's Be Here Now network, where I speak with women about their personal experience on the spiritual path. My name is Melanie, and today I'm sharing a conversation with the lovely Vera de Chalambert. I was introduced to Vera's work through our mutual friend Mira by Star, and I was turned on to her articles, Kali Takes New York, A Sign of the Times, and Kali Takes America, I'm With Her. And she has a beautiful, deeply rich and poetic way of sharing her experience in the spiritual, non-dual healing, and in her work with the divine feminine. And it was super, super fun to get a chance to talk with her and to hear her take on the emerging feminine in our lives today. I hope that you will enjoy this conversation, and please do go to the Shakti Hour page at BeHereNowNetwork.com, where you'll find links to all of Vera's work and website. And also, please go to Patreon/Shakti Hour. I've started a new Patreon page that has some extra reflections on some of the conversations I've had, some special guided meditations, and other offerings that you can find there. And also you can subscribe there and become a patron of the show and receive special rewards. And I really want to have the page become a place where we can engage in some deeper conversations, possibly about some of the issues that are coming up here on the Shakti Hour. So don't feel that you have to become a patron to enjoy a lot of the free material there, and also just to come in and access that and join in the conversation around the Shakti Hour and all of the wonderful insights and wisdoms that have been coming up over the course of this series. So thanks so much. Please remember to subscribe to the Shakti Hour on iTunes, and thanks again for listening. So Vera, I really want to kind of kick off with just this beautiful quote that is on your website about the nature of consciousness. You say, "It is the nature of consciousness to seek wholeness. It is our destiny to find it everywhere." How can you reflect on that in this moment?
Oh, I mean, perhaps that is the nature of the feminine.
Yeah.
You know, that place where we don't have to earn anything, where we don't have to earn our place in the circle of life, where we don't have to earn our wisdom, where somehow who we truly are is always already here. That place in us that feels, if only I had another degree, if only I sat with the right spiritual teacher or another spiritual teacher, or longer or better, or have been more devoted, or whatever it is that's the story. The permission of the feminine is to put that story away. You always already are what you're searching for. You do not need to earn your right to speak, to share, to teach, to be who you are. Your word and you've always been. And that place in us that feels, I can share my voice, if only I were to be recognized, if someone gives me the authority to speak, right? If someone gives me the approval, right? Like that's sort of the patriarchy speaking through us. And for me, I see the feminine as that aspect of reality that that disrupts and undercuts that habitual kind of that habitual pattern of the ego that keeps us loyal to the false self.
I like that you use that word permission in there. That the feminine offers a permission to be whole.
Yeah.
And how has that evolved in your life? Like, how have you come to understand that?
It's very much still evolving.
Yeah.
It's very much still evolving, and
Yeah.
and very much in this ground of, but who do you think you are, Vera, to share anything? How dare you speak your truth? How dare you think? How dare you believe that you have anything to offer? How dare you trust your shaking voice? How dare you speak from a place of not knowing? How dare you know anything? How dare you not know anything? So for me, especially this last year of my life, where I've been called to step up or step in a little bit more publicly into the collective discourse, has been such a year of how the fuck dare you. And that voice of you're not enough, smart enough, ready enough, wise enough, spiritual enough, you are too much. You're too much of a mess. You're too much. You're too chaotic. You're too unstructured. You're too unready for me, where I am both too much and never enough, have been so profoundly up. And I don't know a single woman for whom those places are not up in stepping into, or perhaps a single human being, but I'm thinking in terms of women at the moment, where the rules have been a bit different for the feminine. Even in the sense of having a space, a place in spiritual discourse, right? I mean, every spiritual tradition that I know of, and my background is a scholar of comparative religion, but every religious tradition, maybe to the exception of maybe Shakta, Kashmiri Shaktism, for example,
which is basically non-existent at this time. Yeah, but yeah.
Right, and it's always pretty perfect, but this place where you could have vision of the goddess, and then by receiving, you had the authority to speak, because it wasn't a man that would give you the authority to speak, but the goddess herself. But really, every religious lineage, every religious tradition has been created for men by mostly celibate men. And so the feminine voices have been almost completely and universally excluded, to few exceptions, who could navigate those forms of power and patriarchy successfully enough so that their voices could emerge. But really, I don't know that we have models of what it's like when you say, I wanted to create this Shakti power to allow for this feminine discourse, for women's voices to emerge in this uniquely feminine way. What I love about that is that we have no models for it. We are emerging as the models for it. You said it sort of to allow that unknown, vulnerable territory, for which we are collectively beginning to create a space. What does it look like not knowing? And can any truth or wisdom truly ever emerge but from that complete surrender to the unknown? Ralph Waldo Emerson says, only to the degree that we are unsettled is there any hope for us. I really love that. And we spend our lives trying to get settled.
And so is that the seeking of wholeness? You know, and that I'm sticking with this quote because it's so rich, but the wholeness is, and then there's the seeking wholeness is the destiny. So is that the seeking through the unknown to return to the wholeness? Is that I mean, how do you see that, the seeking and the wholeness, like relating to one another?
Well, I think that's the yes to the known and the yes to the unknown, the yes to the hope and the yes to the hopelessness. All of these aspects that, you know, the way we typically function is, you know, the spiritual is okay as long as it's bright and shiny and certain and given to us in this transmitted way, and as long as it's positive, and as long as we have it together to some degree, right? There's all of this way in which we tend to, in the beginning, especially of our spiritual life, function through exclusion of everything that's inconvenient within us, everything that's quote unquote unspiritual or not spiritual enough. How do we purify enough to be worthy and holy? How do we improve ourselves enough to be ready and whole? But as we mature in our spiritual lives, as we really step into the deeper relationship with reality, a completely different sort of story or way of being emerges, and it's no longer through exclusion but through inclusion. I know and I don't know, and both are me and welcome. I am wise and I am foolish, and I'm not trying to perpetually improve myself to attain some level of quote unquote enlightenment or purification. The mother says, everything is my child. Every territory, every psychological, emotional, spiritual territory within you is my child. She has no orphans, right? And we specifically look for those orphaned territories within us so that we can bring them back in. So we can embrace them again into the fullness of what we are and who we are.
Is there something that you mentioned a few specific kind of not enoughness ideas. Is there something that you specifically are working with in this path of wholeness, in this orphaned part of yourself right now that's coming up that you'd be willing to share with us?
That's a really good question. I mean, for me, it's very much. I feel like the place where who do you think you are?
Mm-hmm.
Who do you think you are? That then connects to this place of I mean, it's like inner authority, right? That it doesn't have to be earned, of the knowing, which doesn't have to be perfect, of showing up as this. I call myself a holy mess a lot. Right? what my work in the world, at least in the way it has emerged, has been around the dark feminine. And of course, the goddess Kali, who is the absolute definition of power and chaos and disruption and destruction and wholeness. So all the territories that we cannot tolerate within the feminine, she is angry, and she is hungry, and she is dirty, and she is messy, and she's bloody, and she is a woman. Right? So how can I hold all of this muchness that I am? All of this inconvenient, inappropriate, uncontainable, that it pours out of me, that doesn't fit into what I so desperately want to fit into. How can I hold it all and say, yes, with all of this holy mess, I can share my heart, right?
Yeah. When you're saying that, it's that there isn't the whole. I'm feeling this. That's part of this giving nature of the mother. That there is no holding on, right?
But there's nothing to hold on to.
Correct.
And that is the entire illusion under which we exist. Right. That somehow we can hold it all together, know everything enough to know what it should look like, see that the world has some kind of actual sort of shape that it should be, and we should be, and if we were these things there, then we would be whole. Right? Then we will have arrived.
Right.
And from that place of having arrived, maybe we might have something to share, right? And that is such an image, that is such a mythology, which I think keeps us separate from ourselves, keeps us in the state of never arriving, of never being enough, of never truly giving our hearts. And the world needs our heart, needs us to share ourselves, not ready, not perfect, not together, right?
And what is it about the feminine that what is it about the feminine that is comfortable in the chaos?
Well, nothing is comfortable. That's the point, right? Like this sense, we cannot be comfortable. There's no comfort in truth. There's no, that idea that we should somehow be safe and secure and comfortable, and that's the condition under which we will then operate. Like, once I'm safe, I'll be able to say something. Once I'm safe and comfortable and secure in my knowing, then maybe I'll have the authority to whatever. Right? Like, everything is an ultimate risk. Every single thing. There is no security, and the more we give ourselves to that, the more Shakti can move through us in its irreverent aliveness that it is that we are. And there's no safety in that. That's just an illusion. And for me, actually, our spiritual life is becoming more and more intimate with that lack of security. And ultimate security, actually, through becoming intimate with that groundless nature of reality.
Yeah.
It's like I say, the spiritual life is for losers. If you want to win, you're in the wrong business.
Right. Right. Those polarities, I don't know why this is coming up for me today, and what you're sharing, and this idea of polarities, of light and dark, of chaos and stability, safety and risk, masculine, feminine. what is the value of that? Right? If you look at the image of the goddess, there's multiple arms. There's not just a left and right, up and down, front and back situation happening. But what is it that is there a value in those polarities?
Well, I mean, whether a value, it's part of this incarnation, right? Part of being in these human lives and human bodies is part of being of the world of duality, and try as we might to escape it into whatever pure lands we hope we will arrive to if we just practice hard enough. If we're just awakened enough, we will always, as long as we are incarnated, exist within the world of duality. That's just part of the deal in this incarnation. And so the value of it is that we get to live the fullness of the entire spectrum, from bliss, right, to loss, and there's no more value in one than the other. All of it is the body of the mother, right? All of it is the path. Sort of, it's like we tend to kind of live. For example, one polarity that comes to me as we speak is this very commonly cited one: the opposites of love and fear. Right? You can either come from love and fear, and it always makes me like, first of all, there is no opposite to love, but secondly, there's nothing wrong with fear. I mean, to such a degree that I have a statue of her. I mean, she is meant to evoke the terror in your system. There's something about fear, right? The limbic system it's so powerful. It's so powerful that we want to use that Shakti to awaken. We want to use everything, in fact.
And the terror, when you're saying that, I had this dream just the other night about this beautiful ocean. I was running on a beach next to this ocean that was more beautiful than any ocean I've ever been to and around the world. It was the most beautiful thing. And I was running along the beach in this dream, and I was joyful and free. And it started to dawn on me that I was terrified of the ocean. I was looking at this beauty and this giant waves and this incredible technicolor. And to what you're saying, I should be. It is terrifying from an egoic, perspective, to merge with that amazing beauty that Shakti, that ultimately has no regard for me per se, that I'm a part of it, to become a part of that. And so in that fear does inform me. It is the love. Yeah.
And it's also the dot. I mean, just to say the value of this, it's like, it's absolute annihilation of everything that you want to hold on to. I mean, right? What is the function of awakening? It's to annihilate everything that's not real, right? So how appropriate the fear of death, the radical fear that you must encounter and move through. It's like, our favorite, one of my favorite beings is, and I'm sure it's mutual, is Mirabai Star, who's, I feel like she's this living prophet of the world's soul that we have to cohabitate with at the same time. And her work on, has influenced me so profoundly on the dark night of the soul and on the really feminine emergence in the world. And what I really love so much, and for me, so John, Saint John of the Cross, right, who she translated and who she really, for me, brought to life in such a profound way, spoke about God in the beginning of our spiritual life, breastfeeding us, This sweet mother God who is giving us her sweet milk, and we're just these infants, and we're suckling her. And then something happens, and what happens is the beginning of the process of spiritual maturation. And the dark night of the soul, when everything we know begins to be stripped of us, and we're kind of sent into the desert, into this darkness that completely annihilates the ego. So it is the process of growing us, of spiritually maturing us. It's not for the faint of heart, and it's inescapable. But what I really love, and this is where my work kind of, I feel like, comes in, or intuitively I somehow reframed it. It's like, at first, God is this benevolent mother, right? That is what pulls us into the spiritual life. That sweetness, Mother Mary, the illuminated one, right? The one that we all want. The milk, we want to taste the milk. We taste the milk, and then it's the weaning process, and then she begins to bear weapons. Then she's no longer that loving, soft mother that God pulls out her weapons, and begins to cuts off our head, like this fearsome aspect of reality. We begin to experience God. And so for me, that really is so much Kali, right? Yeah. Like part of reality that is woven into reality, which reality itself begins to burn you up, begins, to wean you off that sweet, infantile spirituality, right? And cook you in her fire of transformation, right? Mirabai explains it so well with, at first, there is this process of emptying us out, right? God has to strip us down and burn us up and empty us out so that we can begin to be a vessel, an instrument of the divine will, right? So this has to happen where you can finally say, not my will, but your will, right? Burn up everything that there is in me. I no longer want it. Take it, Mother. Take it. Burn me up, right? And then as we get carved out by the divine, right? Then God begins to pour light into us, except to our consciousness, to our psyche, that still has the old eyes. That light looks like darkness. It's too much light. And so we see it as darkness. And that darkness, being in that darkness, is what continues to prepare the soul to be able to receive the light, to be transfigured by the light, to be given new eyes, right? So first it's empty, then being filled up by divine will, by divine light, by divine quality. And then from that place, right, there's this purification that happens, and then union might arise finally, so that we can begin to be one, completely one with the Mother, one with God, one with the beloved in that holy night of encounter, right? So that union might emerge. And so it's like, oh, that's not the story we get in kindergarten of what the spiritual life, and I mean, spiritual kindergarten, of what the spiritual life looks like.
Right.
We get the story of, if you meditate hard enough, you're going to get better. You're going to get more perfect, and things will start getting better in life. And, you'll get, there's this idea, you will go from bliss to bliss to bliss, from improvement to improvement, that we do these things so that.
But part of bliss is, I think that also is a misconception, and part of that dream with the ocean, with the beauty, is that bliss itself is destructive. Bliss annihilates, the bliss consumes, and so the resistance to being consumed.
Yeah.
can come
You know,
in either one of
also
these packages that we look at. And I know I just want to draw
it's
attention to
appropriate somehow.
what's that?
That resistance is A, natural, B, appropriate, because that's the function of the ego, to resist annihilation. So when we resist, to have such compassion for ourselves, right? That place in us that says, no, you shouldn't even resist. How dare you resist, right? You shouldn't. That's not what surrender looks like. Whatever that place is that then demands that we, that we look in some particular way, that we can let that go. The function that reality will do to us what is most appropriate, that ultimately, no matter how hard we try, the ego can't win, that there's something woven into life itself that will do to us what God needs done, and that we can trust it.
So I want to bring up your article, your two articles about Kali. There was one that was before the election, and then there was one that came out after. And you can find that, people that are listening, there'll be links to that on the Shakti Hour page, so you can read those and get caught up. But what you're talking about this now, and like you said, you've been kind of called into public eye around this to help people see potentially the change that's going on in America through these eyes. Can you speak a little bit kind of directly about how you see that evolving now? It's been a year. It's been a little over a year that's been out there for you, and that we've been living it.
Yeah, interesting. So what I would want to say about that is that what I felt into, and I think we all somehow collectively recognized, is that there is an archetype that's emergent in the world right now. It emerged for me very evidently with the election. When I said Kali takes America, a lot of people interpreted it to be that somehow Donald Trump is the embodiment of Kali, which is not at all what I wanted to say. But
I did not. So
what I felt, what made the connection for me is how shocking it was. Right, what a shock it was that suddenly Donald Trump was president of the United States. How shaken up we all felt by that. What a stripping of illusion of America happened to some degree. Right? That what emerged we needed to see, that somehow the illusions that needed to be shattered got shattered in just so. And that's happening with our recognition around climate change, which is no longer deniable in any way. Right, there is a way in which it's happening holographically in so many aspects of our lives. I mean, from the fires that people have been experiencing in California to these, historic hurricanes, to the ways in which it is becoming collectively evident that we cannot hide from what's actually happening.
Right.
That there is no safety, there's no security, and that is happening simultaneously, from my perspective, on the outside as the planet is awakening. But so you could see it. For me, it's almost like this Kali Yuga is part of the awakening of the Shakti of the planet, and it's shaking shit up.
Yeah.
Really, when our Kundalini begins to awaken, when we cannot. And what part of what happens is this shake. Reality isn't what we thought it was. It isn't these conditions on the outside. It's something that is a universe on the inside. Our assemblage point, our perception shifts completely. Who we thought we were lies in the ashes of the old self. Right.
Yeah, I was just talking last night. I had some people for a little meditation, and I was talking about our senses and how we just accept, we're like, oh yeah, I have 5 senses. I've got sight, hearing, I can hear all these different smell, touch, taste. We accept the complexity and richness and as if, and then to turn in to see that same richness and complexity and sensitivity on the inside, then the mind becomes skeptical.
Mm-hmm.
But this revealing,
Mm-hmm.
this turning inside of itself,
this awakening in some way, or in awakening, right?
In
like
awakening,
this,
I like that. Yeah,
it's not my term. I read it somewhere.
Wow.
I wish I could attribute it.
I still like it.
In awakening, it's part of what as the feminine emerges, awakens on the planet. It's not something that's external or happening somewhere out there, nor is it a return to some kind of, goddess ways. It is an emergent quality of reality, and it's happening through us, through our bodies, through our wisdom, through our voices, through our perception. And part of what it is like exactly as you said, sort of like, how do we begin to be loyal to what we know beyond our 5 senses, to what we know with our hearts, to what we know with our feminine wisdom, which is like the set of beliefs that we inherited from the outside.
And I really just want to point this out, because I really love how you said that it's emergent, that it is not a return to some time pre-existing thing or some toppling of one thing for another thing, and that's really the difficulty of
that we are
holding
birthing.
that.
We are birthing it. It's like Meister Eckhart, my friend Adam Bucko uses this quote. He says, what good is it that Mother Mary gave birth to Christ 2,000 years ago? We are each called to become the mothers of God, because God is always needing to be born. And so really the call collectively today, in every age, but I feel today more palpably so than ever, is that God is birthing through us. We are each, becoming the mother of what needs to be born through us. It's like we're self-birthing. And what does that look like? It's messy and it's ugly and it's painful, and the contraction comes and you feel like every one of them is going to kill you, 30 hours before, I can tell you. Every is this way in which the birthing process isn't this beautiful idealized thing. It's horrid. It's complete annihilation. And we are moving through this collectively in the most profound, or beginning to move through it collectively in the most profound of spiritual ways. And so that requires our own stepping into that kind of motherhood of God individually each in our own lives, to keep saying, yes, God, use me, do through me what in me, whatever it is that you need to do in me. You need to burn me up so that you can use me, so that you can birth through me. And then collectively, as our old ideas and structures, so as our own no longer serve us, no longer carry us, something new begins to emerge. Right. And again, it's like that mystery of birthing. Like, we can't know what it looks like. We don't know the face of our own child. It's like we have to go to the place where we're certain we're going to die. Do you know who Marion Woodman is?
No, I don't know her.
She's an incredible, she's still alive, and she's sort of an elder of I don't know, of the world soul. She's a Jungian psychoanalyst, and she writes a lot, and specifically about the feminine. And she says, that in the ancient, that we live in a culture with no rituals anymore, with no initiation. So in the ancient times, when a person would come to maturity, would come to a certain level in their maturation process, and we still see it in like the Jewish tradition with the bar of bat mitzvah, right? Let's say it's age of adolescence. There is a necessary initiation that every member of society moves through. And it usually looks like this. You're taken in the middle of the night from your cozy bed, and you're taken somewhere by your elders, sometimes in the night in the dark wood, and maybe thrown into a dark pit.
Okay.
Where
Okay.
you must rely on your own A, deep inner knowing, B, deep inner resources. C, you do not know and cannot know if you will make it through. That you cannot be certain that you would survive this ordeal. And that as you do, as you use everything within you, as your sight adjusts to darkness and you begin to see in the light, as your inner resources emerge, the kinds you never knew you had that emerged from complete unknowing, as you emerge from that initiation, you become an adult. You become a worthy and mature member of your tribe. And so in the absence of the rites of passage, in the absence of such initiation, something that must happen spiritually, and spiritually, of course, that initiation is the dark night of the soul, right? Reality initiates us, whether we like it or not. And that part of what, some people say, like, part of what's emerging is a collective initiation. We are now in a global dark night of the soul, where we do not know if we have been thrown into a dark pit, and we do not know if we will make it. And that is necessary, and that is good, and that is part of our maturation and initiation into a kind of collective spiritual maturity. And
do you see yourself as like a spiritual doula? I'm getting this image of you as like a
oh, it's beautiful. Yeah. Well, first of all, I love that image. Well, I don't see myself as any more of a spiritual doula than you. Yeah. I think that what's happening is that we are each called to other birth. We're each the doula now, right? We are being called to do this work for each other and for ourselves. And so maybe that's also part of what is so specifically feminine in us, in both men and women, I want to say. So this isn't a conversation among women for women. This is that feminine aspect within both men and women that is emerging and emergent and naturally pouring forth from us, where that is naturally occurring, right? This kind of a doulership, if you wish.
Yeah.
For each other. How can we be that for each other?
Yeah, and a doula being not the midwife, but the doula, right? The midwife being really specific, right?
Thank you for being specific. That's rare. Yeah.
Because there's something about the doula that has an endurance to it. And this being there, sustaining and supporting in partnership throughout.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. And so now here we are. We're at the start of a new year, and we spoke a little bit kind of before we officially started about a bit of the chaos and rewiring and realignments that happened over the last little while. And now here we are coming to start this new year. And what do you see as the next steps emerging in this birthing process?
Well, first, I truthfully don't know. What I find so exciting about this is that I think more and more of us are willing not to know, are willing to touch or to surrender to the mystery that can work even more potently through us if we say yes to it. So that we dare not knowing.
And how does that show up in the day to day? Like, I really feel what you're saying.
Yeah.
How does that manifest in the day to day? I've got to go to work, got to get my kids to school.
So that's a really, really important question. So part of it is developing that inner listening, which begins to build the discernment between the world of, the world of habit, the world that we inhabit, the world in which we survive and must, and that's part of our holy, sacred work. This ordinary world is the sacred, right? This is our spiritual life, no less than anything else we might consider spiritual. And at the same time, how do we listen so intimately to our deep knowingness, which emerges, I think, from that place of the not knowing, which begins to sort of rewire us to expand our perceptual framework from that which only gave us authority and instruction and definition from the outside to that place, that within us that knows what it knows, that intuitive understanding, that feminine knowing. And again, feminine for men and for women. That feminine wisdom within us that knows what it knows. How do we listen and work from that place? As opposed to always asking or always allowing that kind of voice, which I tend to call the patriarchy, and I know that people have reactions to that because then it's like, again, the opposites. But with the patriarchy within us, we'll say, oh, that's not important. Oh, you're not worthy yet. Oh, it's you don't look the way that you should look. Whatever it is, that voice of the false self, right? That voice which demands that you are more that you are, that you should look in a certain way, that what is most significant is not at all significant because, well, it has no use. It has no use in the right, the quote unquote false paradigms of the world that we navigate. How do we trust what we know within us, right? And so for me, day to
day, how do I show up at the door of the school from this place of inner knowing? The school's still there. The time is still 8:15. These things are all still these things, but how am I witnessing that or experiencing that from that place? The useless, the place of no use. Yeah, that's beautiful.
Or, the place of no use and ultimate importance.
Yeah, that's what's so nice about it. Yeah.
From this place, like whether it's those aspects of our relationships that are transactional, like, but what is essential is is usually, I mean, you know, in the Little Prince, what is essential is invisible to the eye, but there's something more to that, right? Like, it's like part of what we are growing into, part of what we're learning to discern is how to turn so completely towards reality, right? How to be so intimate with reality that everything we do and are in the ordinary life emerges from that place.
Yeah. To being present.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in that presence is the courage to continue to be present.
And to continue saying yes,
Yeah.
and not being ready and saying yes anyway.
Yeah.
Right? And not being perfect and saying yes anyway, and not knowing what's coming next and saying yes anyway. Not knowing, you know, what reality will do to us, but knowing that in saying yes to that, you know, and for me, it literally looks like, Mother, take me, do in me whatever you must do so that I can be your instrument. Right? Like, and living from that place of surrender and devotion to truth. You know, that's sort of the place that I'm in myself. To keep reorienting towards, and returning to, perhaps.
And so from that place, what would you offer as your piece of advice specifically, and to women and girls who, you know, are on the spiritual path but by choice or by desire, wanting to move in this direction?
Yes. That we're never ready. We cannot be ready. And even though we might never be ready to say yes anyway, to share your wisdom and what you know anyway, to take the risk of being seen in our muchness and too muchness and imperfection. Those old models of patriarchal perfection, you know, those are no longer in service to our time and to our world. What the world needs what the world needs now is us in these, you know, imperfect human lives, in our, you know, hot mess human selves. The world needs us. And
in wholeness, in wholeness, yeah,
and in brokenness,
right?
Do you know, like that the wholeness,
that's part of that, yeah.
Includes the brokenness that we are, and that we need to share all of it with each other, right? So that more and more of us is welcome here in this world, so that less and less is orphaned within us in this world, so that we can be a mirror for each other, and so that we can be a mirror and a healing balm for each other. And part of the way in which that happens is through this kind of self-disclosure, and the disclosure of the self that's not perfect and doesn't need to be. That what we are is of ultimate value. Not one day, not when we have it all together, not when some, you know, man tells us we now have the authority to speak, but from that deep, unconditional, vast feminine knowing that we are.
Well, it's such a delight to sit and hear the poetry of your expression of your own understanding of spiritual evolution. And it doesn't escape me that it is rooted in tapas. Harvard Divinity School is not a joke. And this rich, deep depth that has gone into your capacity to express and share from this place for us. It is well received, and I have gratitude and love and appreciation for your willingness to offer that out to all of us and to take us there with you.
I'm so grateful for this invitation, grateful for this incredible space that you're creating in the collective for women to bring our feminine knowing, for us to show up with all of it, that there's space for everything that we are and that you're creating. This conversation, I think, is just like such a profound contribution, and perhaps what is most needed in life and in this world right now. So thank you for showing up and for building this sacred vessel that can hold all of us and so much of what's emerging in our time.
Thank you for being a part of it. And please, everyone, do go to the Shakti Hour page at BeHereNowNetwork.com. Find links to Vera's websites, offerings, healing services, writings, workshops, and more of what she has to share with us. And thank you so much, Vera, for your time.
Thank you.